Okay, we're back with Tom, and we're discussing his life in the early part of the 1930s and the late 1920s. We were discussing your mother. You were mentioning that it was very hard to communicate with her because she couldn't hear very well.
That's correct.
But you had your father, or pardon me, your brother was an instrumental part of your life. He was 10 years older than you, and he lived with you. And was he more of a parental figure than your mother was?
Yes, he was sort of my. I looked upon him as my father at home. Because I didn't have a real father at home.
Your father, we'll give a little background on your father. From what we know, most of what we just found out. What was your father's name?
My father, Charles Chester Cook.
And what was his name when he entered America?
As my understanding, his name was Cookalo.
Chaskel Kukolo, I think it was.
Yeah,
He was from Russian Empire. He was a Jew, correct?
that's correct. Yeah, but whether he was a practicing Jew, I don't know.
But he came from a religious family.
Oh, yes, mother and father were very religious.
And from what you know, by marrying your mother, did that cause conflict with his relationship?
Yes, there was a conflict. Uh, my father converted to Catholicism and married my mother, and that didn't go over too big with the mother and father, his mother and father, and I guess he was put on that list that that was it.
Um, what was the story about your mother and father? Your mother made your father a goose or something like that?
Well, my 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 mother wasn't much of a cook, and he always said, "Why don't you cook some fish? I like fish." So she said, "Well, Charlie, you want fish? When you come home tomorrow, you have a fish." And he got off the uh, trolley car, whatever it was, and he said he could smell the fish. According to my mother, he could smell the fish a mile away. And she put the fish in the pot, skin, bones, and guts, and everything and all, in one big pot. And when he came through the door, she said, "Hey, Charlie, here's your fish. How is that?" And I don't know whether that was a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's gonna help your marriage out too much. So, do you know the circumstances of why your father left the family? Or were you ever explained? Because I know when you were born, I believe your father was already not in the home. Is that correct? From what you understand?
Married what, David?
When you were born, was your father living in the house with you? From what you know,
Uh, I don't remember that day, David, at all. He was living there.
do you ever
No,
recall living with your father at all?
not in the same house, no.
Can you dictate for me your encounters with your father? How many were there?
I met my father four times. The first time I seem to remember I was about 7 or 8 or something like that in the Chinese restaurant, and my brother took me up there, and my father was there, and I ordered my meal, and my brother asked me, "Do you know who this man is?" And I said, "Sure, that's my father." He never had the courtesy to say, "Well, hiya, Tom, I'm your dad." He never said that, so I didn't say anything, and that was it. And then I met him one other time, and I went down to see the family in Brooklyn by Prospect Park. I was curious about who they were. I met my Aunt Ida there, and my father was there. I met him. And the third time I met him before I went into service, and I can only,
Didn't he take you to Coney Island once too?
yeah, I took me to Coney Island, but there's only about 4 times at the most I ever met him, you know. But he was he seemed to be a nice person, and before I went into service when I met him, he was very nice. Took me down to the house, and I believe Aunt Ida was there, and that was it, you know.
Who was
So-
Aunt Ida?
That was the sister, his sister.
Well,
She was a head of the Red Cross Drive in Brooklyn during the Second World War,
Oh,
and she was a lawyer.
okay.
Not exactly a easy person to talk to. I remember when my brother passed away, I phoned up Aunt Ida and told her what happened, that he died in Tennessee, and she said, "Well, what was he doing down there?" I said, "He was in show business, Aunt Ida. He was traveling around,
Hmm.
and really disappointing. I never spoke to her again."
What was your brother like? Explain you know, we know that he was an entertainer. Well, what exactly did he do?
What did he do? He had a partner named Doug Cartland, and they played table tennis, and they cracked jokes and did funny things, and they often took on the local people who were good at table tennis. Some you know, fly by night champion, and play them and beat them, of course.
He also did he caddy for Babe Ruth?
Yeah, he caddied. Right, he was a caddy for Babe Ruth when Babe Ruth used to, during the Second World War, the old golf course, St. Albans Golf Course. Uh, they made it into a medical center, naval medical center. But before that, it was a golf course anyway. And he caddied for Babe Ruth when he was down there.
Hmm. He also made movies, right?
Well, he made one movie, Castle Film. Both of them made a movie, Castle Films, and it's I still have it somewhere in the trunk.
Okay. Did he serve in the military?
Now he was in the USO. He went overseas with the USO, entertaining the troops with the same act with his partner, table tennis, and
And he also performed during the Harlem Globetrotter games, correct?
right. He was he played in between the Harlem Globetrotters games, and Jesse Owens was the narrator during those games. And,
Jesse Owens is the
famous track
track and
star.
field Olympian, right?
Yeah, track star, right. I met him, and my brother introduced me, and in between the games, they would halftime. They would come out, my brother and his partner, and entertain the crowd with their and just fooling around with the table tennis and
Okay. All right, that'll end part 2.